All right, today's lesson is lesson 9-9 over the quadratic formula and the discriminant. Our first objective today is going to be to determine the number of solutions of a quadratic equation by using the discriminant, and then we're going to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. For starters, at the top of your page, I want you to go ahead and write down the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is written as x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by or over 2a. The portion of the quadratic formula that is inside the square root sign here, the b squared minus 4ac, is also known as the discriminant. So over beside that, I want you to write the word discriminant, and I want you to write b squared minus 4ac. In the first three problems that we're going to do today, we're going to talk about finding the discriminant. I also want you to write down that you can determine, you don't have to write this down, you can determine the number of solutions of a quadratic equation will have by solving the discriminant. I do want you to write down that if the discriminant is positive, there are two real solutions. If the discriminant is 0, there is one real solution. And if the discriminant is negative, there are no real solutions. You need to have all of this written down except for what is down here in blue before you move on, and you may pause the video now if you need to. Alright, go ahead and get down to number 1. It's 3x squared minus 2x plus 2 equals 0. And the first step is that we're going to list our A, our B, and our C. We know again, ax squared plus bx plus c is what we're dealing with here. So our A is our number in front of our x squared, our B is our number in front of our x, and our C is our last number here. So we're going to list our A, which is 3, our B, which is 2, or negative 2, sorry, and our C, which is positive 2. So we have A is 3, B is negative 2, C is positive 2, and we're going to plug into this formula b squared minus 4ac because this is how we find the discriminant. Alright, so my B is negative 2. The formula says I'm squaring that, minus 4, and then my A is 3, and my C is positive 2. So at this point in time, all I have to do is type that into the calculator and hit enter. So I'm just going to go ahead and type this in. And that's going to give me negative 20. Now, again, what we're looking at here is if our discriminant is positive, 0, or negative. It is negative here. Negative 20 is obviously a negative number. So we're going to write that our discriminant, which we will abbreviate with disc, is negative, which means that there are no real solutions. Make sure that you have that down before you move on. Alright, go ahead and get down number 2. It's 2x squared plus 11x plus 12 equals 0. And again, I've written our formula for finding the discriminant over here, b squared minus 4ac. And I've also made another note here about how if it's positive, there are two real solutions, 0, one real solution, and negative, no real solutions. So again, we're going to list our A, B, and C just like we did before. Our A is 2, B is 11, C is 12, and we're going to plug into the formula. My B is squared minus 4AC C. Again, all I have to do here is type this in the calculator. 11 squared minus 4AC. 25. Positive 25. So my discriminant is positive, which means there are two real solutions. So I have to write not just the 25. Discriminant is positive. Two real solutions. Make sure that you have that down before you move on. We'll take a look at number 3. All right, go ahead and get down number 3. It's x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 0. And again, I've written down my formula for finding the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. You can never write it enough. Hopefully it'll get it into your head and you'll actually have it memorized. So I'm going to go ahead and list my a, b, and c. There's an understood 1 in front of my x squared if there's nothing else there, making a 1. B is 8. C is 16. I'm going to plug this into my formula here. 8 squared minus 4ac. And again, just like I have the other times before, I'm going to type this into my calculator. 8 squared minus 4ac. And that gives me 0. So this equals 0. I know by referring back up here that when I have 0, it means that I have one real solution. So I'm going to say here discriminant is 0, 1 real solution. Make sure that you have all of that down before you move on. And now we're going to look at plugging the discriminant into the quadratic formula.
All right, go ahead and write down number 4. It says 2x squared minus 8x plus 1. And like Ms. Wilden said, now we're going to find the discriminant and then take and use that discriminant in order to actually find the solutions using the entire formula. All right, so here the first thing we still need to do is pick out our A, our B, and our C. Our A is the number in front of the x squared, B is the number in front of x, and C is the number on the end. So we have 2, negative 8, and 1. So over here I'm going to find the discriminant. Okay. The discriminant formula again is b squared minus 4ac. Now the discriminant, all that's going to do is tell us how many answers we're actually going to have. So we're going to plug that in and say negative 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times 1. We're going to say negative 8 squared is 64. 4 times 2 times 1 is negative 8. And 64 minus 8 is 56. So since that 56 is positive, that tells us that we're going to have 2 solutions. So it's positive, so we're going to have 2 solutions. So on 1, 2, and 3, this is where we got to stop. We got to stop after we found a number of solutions. Now we're actually going to find what are those 2 solutions. So we're going to go back up here and use the actual quadratic formula. And that's negative b, or negative 1b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So we're going to start plugging stuff in here. So I'm going to say negative 1 times b, and b is negative 8, plus or minus the square root. Now here, since we already found the discriminant right here, and the discriminant is what's actually underneath the square root, we don't have to turn on and plug all that back in again. We're just going to use that discriminant that we found. We found out that it was 56. So we're just going to put 56 underneath the square root, because what's underneath the square root is that actual discriminant. All over 2 times a, which is 2, So now we're going to work with our formula. We're going to do our multiplying here. So we're going to say -1 times -8, and that gives us +8, plus or minus the square root of 56 over 2 times 2 is 4. Now we're going to plug the square root of 56 into our calculator. And it's going to be a big long decimal, so we're going to round it to the hundredth. So we're going to say that it's 7.48. That 3 makes that 8 stay an 8. So I'm going to say 8 plus or minus 7.48, because that was the square root of 56, over 4. Now I have to split this up because I have a plus and a minus here. So I'm going to split this up into 2. And I'm going to say 8 minus 7.48 over 4, and 8 plus 7.48 over 4. And this is actually going to become an approximately, because we are actually having to round here. So there's 2 different ways you can do this. You can do it in 2 different steps if you want to, and you can say 8 minus 7.48 and get 0.52, and then divide by 4. And find out that is approximately 0.13. Or you could have plugged all that into your calculator at one time, and you could have said alpha y equals, and you could have said 8 minus 7.48 over 4, and got that it was 0.13. It's depending on how many steps you want to use there. Now I'm going to do this one. So I'm going to say 8 plus 7.48, and that gives me 15.48 divided by 4. So 15.48 divided by 4 gives me 3.87. So in my squigglies, I'm going to have 0.13 and 3.87. Okay. Normally we're not actually going to take the time to check, but here on this first one we are going to take the time to check the very first one. So to check, I'm going to go back to my original, and everywhere I see an X, so we have 2x squared minus 8x plus 1 equals 0. Everywhere I see an X, I'm going to plug in a 0.13. I'm going to plug that in my calculator and make sure that it gives me 0. 2 parentheses 0.13 squared minus 8 parentheses 0.13 plus 1. And it tells me that it's negative 0.0062. Now since I had to round, as long as it's around 0 or approximately, I'm good. So that does check, because 0.0062 is very, very close to 0. Now I'm going to check with the 3.87. So everywhere I see an X, I'm going to put in a 3.87. And make sure that that gives me 0. So I'm going to use my calculator. 2 parentheses 3.87 squared minus 8 parentheses 3.87 plus 1. And again, it gives me the same thing, but again, I'm just looking for approximately. As long as it's very, very close, you're good. And it is. So there's my check for that one. Please make sure you have all the work and the check written for number 4 before you move on. All right, go ahead and write down number 5. 3x squared equals negative 7x plus 2. Here, I can't go ahead and find my a, b, and c because this needs to be an ax squared plus bx plus c form and equal to 0 before I can use my quadratic formula. So since my 3x squared over here is positive, and I usually like for my a to be positive, I'm going to move the negative 7x and the positive 2 over to the left-hand side. So I'm going to add 7x to both sides, and since it's plus 2, I'm going to subtract 2. I'm going to do this all in one step. Get rid of both of them all at once. I'm going to list them in descending order. 3x squared plus 7x minus 2 equals 0, because everything on my right hand side of my equal sign canceled. Now I can go ahead and pick out my a, b, and c. A is 3, b is 7, c is negative 2. And again, my first step here is I want to find the discriminant to figure out how many solutions I'm actually looking for. So my discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to plug those in. 7 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 2. And I'm fine, especially in class and on a test, if you just want to plug all of that in your calculator at once and say parentheses 7 squared minus 4 parentheses 3 parentheses negative 2 and hitting enter. Okay? That'll keep you from getting your signs messed up, because here 7 squared is 49 minus, and if I say 4 times 3 times negative 2, I get negative 24, and these two negatives are going to turn into a positive, and 49 plus 24 still gives me the 73, but again, there's less chance that you're going to make a sign error if you go ahead and just plug all of this into your calculator, and I'm fine with that. So we found the discriminant. It's a positive 73. So since it's positive, that tells us 2 real solutions. I'm going to put 2 solutions, but it's 2 real solutions. So now I'm going to actually use that discriminant in my quadratic formula to actually find what those 2 solutions are. So we're going to say x equals negative b, or negative 1 times b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Again, there's my discriminant that I've already found for 2 times a. So I'm going to start plugging stuff in. Negative 1 times b, which is 7, plus or minus the square root. And here, I don't have to replug all this back in. You can, it's not a big deal, but you're going to have more steps. I already found that b squared minus 4ac part in my discriminant. So I'm going to go ahead and just plug in 73 over 2 times a, which is 3. So negative 1 times 7 is negative 7, plus or minus the square root of 7, or the square root of 73. 2 times 3 is 6. So I did my multiplying here and here. Then I'm going to find what the square root of 73 is. So I'm going to use my calculator. And I'm going to say square root of 73. And again, I'm in a big long decimal because it's not a perfect square, so I'm going to round it to the 100th. So that would be 8.54, because that other 4 makes that 1 4 stay a 4. So it's 8.54. Then once I get it to here, I'm going to split it up and say negative 7 minus 8.54 over 6, and negative 7 plus 8.54 over 6. Okay, and again, I'm going to plug this in my calculator. I'm going to use my alpha y equals. And I'm going to say negative 7 minus 8.54 over 6. And it's going to tell me that it's approximately negative 2.59. Then I'm putting the other one, negative 7 plus 8.54. Whoops, I forgot my alpha y equals. Negative 7 plus 8.54 divided by 6 tells me that it is approximately 0.26. And we're going to say that it's 0.26 because this 6 is going to round that 5 right there to a 6. So it's 0.26. So go ahead and do your braces, negative 2.59, comma 0.26. And again, if I was looking at this on a graph, this would be where the quadratic or the U shape would cross the x-axis. So it would have been my zeros, and that would have been very, very, very hard to find using a graph, but we can find it using the quadratic formula. Please make sure you have all of that written before you move on. All right, go ahead and write down number 6, 5x squared minus 2x plus 2 equals 0. This one's already in the correct order because I have everything on the left and it's equal to 0. So I can go ahead and pick out my A, my B, and my C. A is the number in front of x squared, B is the number in front of x, and C is the number on the end. So again, I'm going to use my formula b squared minus 4ac to find my discriminant first to tell how many solutions I'm going to have. So I'm going to say negative 2 squared minus 4 times 5 times 2. This is going to give me 4 minus 4 times 5 times 2 is going to give me 40. So 4 minus 40 is negative 36. Okay. And again, you could have plugged all this into your calculator all at once and I would have been fine with that and just told me that it was negative 36. Now here, since it's negative, I have no real solutions. Now, doesn't mean I don't have any solutions, it means I don't have any real ones. Just like what we did in 9-7, when we had the square root of a negative, we ended up with an imaginary number and we used that little bitty I. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to still find those imaginary non-real solutions. I know that's a crazy, crazy idea that we have imaginary numbers. Okay, so we're going to start plugging our stuff into our quadratic formula, our A, B, and C. So our B is going to be negative 2 plus or minus the square root. And again, I don't have to refigure this one, the b squared minus 4ac, because I already found it when I found my discriminant. It's negative 36 over 2 times A. So I'm going to do my multiplying here. This gives me a positive 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 36. And 2 times 5 is, whoops, 10. Now when I take the square root of negative 36, we're going to do exactly like what we did in 9-7. Anytime I see the square root of a negative, I know I'm going to have a little bitty I for imaginary. Basically what that does is it's the same thing as the square root of negative 1. So it just moves that negative out of the way so that I can take the square root of 36. And the square root of 36 is 6. So we're going to call that 6I over 10. So again, we're going to split this up, and we're going to say 2 minus 6i over 10, and 2 plus 6i over 10. Now, I can't actually put that in my calculator because it's not a real solution. It's an imaginary one. However, I can do a little bit here to reduce, because I notice that 2, 6, and 10 can be reduced here. So instead of putting the 10 underneath one of these, I'm going to put it underneath both, and I'm going to reduce. 2 over 10 reduces to 2 over 5, then my minus, and 6 over 10 reduces to 3 over 5i. So that's how I'm going to leave my answer for that one. This is my answer, 2 over 5 minus 3 over 5i. I'm going to do the same thing here, and it's going to leave me with 2 over 5 plus 3 over 5 with the little bitty I. Go ahead and make sure you have all of that written before you move on. Anytime that you end up with the little bitty I's, you can't actually check those because, again, they're not real. So there would be no check with this one even if we were checking all of them. Alright, so you should now be able to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula and then determine the number of solutions of a quadratic equation by using the discriminant, so telling how many solutions it has and then actually finding those solutions. And we're going to look at that one contextual situation in class tomorrow. Go ahead and get out a sheet of paper and go ahead and write down the assignment. It's 9-9 day, or actually it's just 9-9 day 2. Hold on. Oh yeah, sorry about that. I almost gave you the homework assignment for the second day and not the first day. So this is 9-9 day 1. So go ahead and write this one down. It's page 675. You're going to do number 25, 26, and 27. So go ahead and have that written on a sheet of paper so that you're ready to go tomorrow. That is the end of your video. Thank you for watching.